Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander's Quarters studio. Welcome to the show. So just a quick heads up, during the spoiler season, I've had to change up my recording setup just a bit, so I might sound a little different. That being said, the spoiler season is an incredible one. Some really exciting cards coming out, including Reflection of Kiki Jiki, or okay, should I say the front side of the card is Fable the Mirror Breaker, but to see what that card is all about, make sure you check that episode out. Also, another episode for you to check out at some point is my most recent one with Anchor to Reality, and this is a really sweet card. I mean, let's just say it's Tinker Light. Okay, it's nowhere near as powerful as Tinker, but it's still very powerful and really exciting. But don't leave just yet because, oh my goodness, we've got a brand new Mythic and it does what? So to find out, let's jump into it. So, SpiritSisters Call is an enchantment for 3 white-black, and it says, at the beginning of your end step, choose target permanent card in your graveyard. You may sacrifice a permanent that shares a card type with the chosen card. If you do, return the chosen card from your graveyard to the battlefield, and it gains, if this permanent would leave the battlefield, exile it instead of putting it anywhere else. So there's quite a bit going on in this card, and the amount of value and potential that it has for the right deck, well, can be pretty insane. First up, this is a trigger that happens at the beginning of every single one of your end steps, so you can go get something out of your graveyard if you're willing to sacrifice something that shares a permanent type with it. Now, obviously, there are decks out there that actually want to sacrifice things, like, maybe an aristocrat-style deck, so those decks could just benefit right there from a sacrifice trigger, and also just getting value out of your graveyard. But obviously, I think the bigger implication for this card is that this allows you to essentially cheat out massive things that share a permanent type. Again, let's say that you even just have a small token in play, like, maybe like a 1/1 spirit, okay? You can sacrifice that for whatever massive creature in your graveyard, and it's just, apparently an even swap with this. So you sacrifice something much lesser for something much greater, and yeah, this can put you way ahead if you're set up in the right way. Obviously, the same can be said, for other kinds of tokens, like maybe an artifact token, like maybe a treasure. You sacrifice that for a massive artifact in your graveyard that can be game-changing, and you're going to be set to go. And of course, the same can be said for sacrificing enchantments, and okay, I guess lands. If you really want to sacrifice a land to get another one, I'm sure there's some really good ones that you can get. And yeah, even planeswalkers too. So yeah, trade up your, small planeswalker that might be in play for that giant Nicol Bolas planeswalker in your graveyard. So this Mythic is pretty much a fantastic way to cheat things out. Now, obviously, there's a cost to it, sacrificing one permanent that shares a type for another one. But yeah, there is a lot of potential with this card in the right decks. Maybe you've got a deck that's great at milling itself, a self-mill deck that can get a ton of powerful things in your graveyard, and this can be a great way to cheat them into play. Turn after turn after turn, you essentially sacrifice one small permanent for one much larger permanent and more impactful permanent from your graveyard. If this sticks in play, you're going to get an absurd amount of value out of it, and your opponents are going to be in big trouble. And of course, if you've got ways to actually tutor things in your graveyard, you can get exactly what you need for the situation that you're in and be able to tutor that massive thing out. And of course, there are ways to get even more value out of this as well. For example, let's talk about Ceronic Resonator and Lithiform Engine. Ceronic Resonator has pay 2 and tap, copy target triggered ability you control, you may choose new targets for the copy. So this essentially says, hey, that end step trigger that I'm getting, with my brand new Mythic SpiritSisters Call, I'm just gonna pay 2 and I'm gonna get an extra copy of that and I can choose new targets. So instead of just exchanging one permanent for another, we can exchange 2 permanents for 2 things, and Yeah, I mean, that could just be a game-ending play right there, being able to get two massive things out of your graveyard right into play. In a similar way, there's Lithiform Engine, which does essentially what Ceronic Resonator does, plus a lot of other things. It has pay 2, tap, copy target, activate or trigger ability you control, you can choose targets for the copy, so basically, the exact same text on Ceronic Resonator. And you can also copy instants and sorceries and copy target permanent spells, so yeah, this can do even more, but again, at the end of the day, having either of these in play in combination with SpiritSisters Call is going to be really impactful, being able to double up on that very powerful end step trigger. And actually, the first card that came to my mind when it comes to wanting to cheat something into play would actually be Omniscience. It's an enchantment for 7 blue, so yeah, very restrictive casting cost and 10 mana in total, but the payoff is quite huge. It says you may cast spells from your hand without paying their mana costs, so yeah, free spell slinging from your hand, that is a game-ending effect. So if you can get this into your graveyard and SpiritSisters Call in play, well, you can actually, sacrifice another enchantment, which you're probably going to want to do to keep SpiritSisters Call in play. Though, again, if you are set up to just win once Omniscience is in play, you can actually just sacrifice SpiritSisters Call to itself. It doesn't say you may sacrifice another permanent, that shares a card type with the chosen card. You can actually just sacrifice SpiritSisters Call itself to get out any enchantment. And yeah, swapping out that card from Omniscience can be a game-ending play, and it's going to be well worth it in a lot of cases. But of course, there are plenty of other fantastic targets, and I'm just going to highlight a few enchantments here. I mean, we've got Sandworm Convergence, Eldrazi Conscription, and Overwhelming Splendor. Each of these cost 8 mana, so they can be quite difficult to cast, but again, if you get them into your graveyard, you can just cheat them into play by sacrificing a much smaller enchantment thanks to the new card. Sandworm Convergence says, creatures with flying can attack you or planeswalkers you control, and at the beginning of your end step, create a 5/5 green worm creature token. So this shuts down your opponents from attacking you with flyers, and on top of that, you can just keep making more and more worm tokens at the beginning of your end step. Which maybe you can use those worm tokens to, sacrifice them to go get creatures as well from your graveyard. Or you can make a creature incredibly deadly with something like Eldrazi Conscription, an Eldrazi aura that says enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +10/+10 and has trample and Annihilator too. And that Annihilator 2, of course, means that whenever it attacks, the defending player sacrifices 2 permanents, so yeah, that creature becomes quite deadly, and there's a reason Eldrazi Conscription costs so much mana. And speaking of an expensive enchantment, Overwhelming Splendor is 6 white for a reason. It says enchant player, creatures enchanted player controls lose all abilities and have base power and toughness 1/1. Enchanted player can't activate abilities that aren't mana abilities or loyalty abilities. So this is basically a specific humility on one player, and this can really shut a player down. Now, obviously, there are a ton of other enchantment targets that I could talk about, but let's just highlight some quick artifact targets to talk about as well, like, Possessed Portal, or Darksteel Forge, or Platinum Empyrean. SpiritSisters Call especially would be a deadly combination with Possessed Portal. It's an artifact that says if a player would draw a card, that player skips that draw instead. At the end of each turn, each player sacrifices a permanent unless they discard a card from their hand. So again, this shuts players down from actually drawing cards, and it's going to make players actually sacrifice things at the beginning of their end step. So players can't draw into any more gas, but you can just keep sacrificing, small things to get bigger things out of your graveyard. And again, in some cases, sacrificing things with Possessed Portal or SpiritSisters Call itself is going to be a good thing. Like I mentioned earlier, there are things that have death triggers that you're going to get. As long as you're not sacrificing the thing that you got back with SpiritSisters Call, keep that in mind. But yeah, or you can even set yourself up by sacrificing something, getting it into your graveyard, and then having it come back and it's got an ETB that you can take advantage of. But yeah, let's move on from Possessed Portal and on to Darksteel Forge, an incredible artifact that simply says artifacts you control have indestructible. So if you're in an artifact deck, well, now all your things are very hard to deal with. Which can be a fun combination if you can also get out Platinum Empyrean, an 80 artifact creature golem that says your life total can't change. So by keeping this around, well, your opponents are going to have a hard time taking you out. And of course, there are plenty of other great creature options out there. I mean, you can definitely consider a fantastic card like Avacyn, which is basically, Darksteel Forge, but for all your permanents, an 8/8 flying vigilant indestructible angel that says other permanents you control have indestructible. So good luck to your opponents if you get this out, and especially good luck to your opponents if you get It That Betrays out. It's an 11/11 with Annihilator 2 that says whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent, put that card on the battlefield under your control. So swing away, make your opponents sacrifice things, and gain control of a lot of things. And of course, outside of Eldrazi, we can also talk about Praetors like Jin Gitaxias Core Augur, a 5/4 Praetor with Flash that says at the beginning of your end step, draw 7 cards. Each opponent's maximum hand size is reduced by 7. This is a 10 mana card for a reason. I should have mentioned also that If That Betrays is 12 and Avacyn is 8. So yeah, all these have really high converted mana costs, but Jin Gitaxias can just shut players down. It's going to draw you a ton of cards and make it so that your opponents essentially can't have a hand. Again, the potential value that you can cheat out with SpiritSisters Call is absolutely absurd. Again, just consider immediate value from creatures that have ETBs that you can take advantage of with things like Avenger of Zendikar, Craterhoof Behemoth, and Sepulchral Primordial. Avenger of Zendikar specifically is going to be a really good one because it says when it enters the battlefield, create a 0/1 green plant creature token for each land you control. So this one can give you a ton of plant creature tokens in play, which, again, can be fantastic creature fodder for SpiritSisters Call. And of course, it also has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may put a +1 counter on each plant creature you control. And actually, if you're not looking to sacrifice those creature tokens, but instead just utilize them in the most effective way that you can, you might be able to, just, hey, okay, I'll play my land for the turn, I'll get a counter on all these. At the beginning of my end step, I'll sacrifice a land to get another land out of my graveyard. Maybe that's Involving Wilds, which is going to come into play. I can sacrifice that again to go get, another land. You can get land after land after landfall trigger, just again and again and again to get that army massive. But speaking of getting that army massive, maybe you can just utilize something like Craterhoof Behemoth instead. It's a 5/5 with haste that says when it enters the battlefield, creatures you control gain trample and get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. Yeah, this is a game ender that has ended quite a few games in Commander, so getting it out essentially for free can be a very powerful thing. And of course, you can even make use out of your opponent's creatures in their graveyards with something like Sepulchral Primordial. It has, when it enters the battlefield, for each opponent, you may put up to 1 target creature card from that player's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. So by cheating this out, you get to cheat other things out, and yeah, that can be a lot of value. Even if you're just cheating out a small creature that your opponents control, you can still, sacrifice that for another creature in your graveyard later. Now, when it comes to commanders that might want to consider SpiritSisters Call, again, I did mention, aristocrat-style decks, also self-mill decks, maybe like a Sephirus of the Hidden Ways deck. Sephirus is a 2/3 human wizard that says, whenever one or more creature cards are put in your graveyard from anywhere, venture into the dungeon. This ability triggers only once each turn. And of course, also has Create Undead. Whenever you complete a dungeon, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So you are basically heavily incentivized to get creature cards in your graveyard each turn. So you keep milling yourself over and over again to venture further and further into dungeons and get creatures out of your graveyard. And of course, SpiritSisters Call can help you, sacrifice a creature that's in play for something that's already in your graveyard, just get you some extra value too. And speaking of value, let's talk about Esika, God of the Tree, or maybe more so the Prismatic Bridge. It has at the beginning of your upkeep, reveal cards in the top of your library to reveal a creature or planeswalker card, put that card on the battlefield and the rest of them on your library in any order. So this can be a great way to cheat powerful creatures into play on every single one of your upkeeps. And then again with SpiritSisters Call at your end step, you can exchange a creature that might be in play for an even more powerful one that's in your graveyard. So you're not only getting value on your upkeep, but you're also going to be getting value on your end step, and there's some very powerful things that you can do with this combination. And speaking of powerful, let's talk about one of my earliest commanders with Jodah, Archmage Eternal. Jodah is a 4/3 human wizard with flying, but the important part here is you may pay Wooburg rather than pay the mana cost for spells you cast. So Jodah likes to just cast massive things, and yeah, you're going to have a lot of massive things in this deck. And if you ever get some massive things into your graveyard, well, SpiritSisters Call can say, hey, let's just exchange one of our things in play for that. So yeah, you're going to have a ton of great targets for it in a deck like this, or should I say the right Jodah build. One final kind of commander that I actually want to highlight is one that actually makes tokens itself with something like a Layla, Artful Provocateur. A 2/3 Fairy Warlock with Flying, Death Touch, and Lifelink, and she has other creatures you control flying at +1/+0, but most importantly, whenever you cast an artifact or enchantment spell, create a 1/1 blue fairy creature token with flying. So you can actually utilize the tokens that a Layla makes to sacrifice them to get some powerful creatures out of your graveyard, while also having an enchantment kind of synergy going on as well. And again, of course, if an opponent deals with one of your more powerful enchantments, well, you can sacrifice a lesser enchantment to get that one out instead. But now it's time for me to wrap things up and give you my final thoughts on SpiritSisters Call. Yeah, this mythic definitely lives up to its mythic name. It has a wide range of applications that can help you out in a lot of different situations and can be very game-ending in the right circumstance. The fact that it gives you repeatable value over and over again at the beginning of your end step, and again, there are ways to get even more value out of that with things like Ceronic Resonator. Yeah, this card has a lot of potential. I am very thankful that they put if this permanent would leave the battlefield exile instead of putting it anywhere else onto this, because if that wasn't there, well, this would just be very, well, even more abusable, I should say. I mean, just think about, sacrificing a creature with a fantastic, death trigger or ETB to get another creature with a fantastic death trigger or ETB to do that again, and again, and again. Yeah, there is a somewhat limiting factor to this card, but again, the potential for it is sky high, and I can see a lot of players being really excited to slam this down in a game of Commander. That being said, of course, there are going to be plenty of other exciting cards during the spoiler season coming up, so make sure you stay tuned to this channel for more spoilers and more quick takes. And with that, the show has come to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you, so make sure you comment below and let me know what your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thanks again and have a good one.